Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 139 of the In a Nutshell podcast. I'm your host, Sean Vowells, and I've got Joe Meade with me tonight. Just a little bit of a weekend recap and state of the union in terms of where these teams in the Big Ten are in terms of bracketology, in terms of the standings, and we're starting to get close to the Big Ten tournament. Fans might have a little bit of an idea of when they're going to watch their team play. We've been saying it all year. It is a different format this year. Every single team will be playing in the Big Ten tournament. 9 and 10 seeds have to go and play Wednesday. And at this point, those look like those are going to be teams that are going to be playing in the NCAA tournament. So, Joe, we're going to start with the elephant in the room from my point of view. Purdue 93, Indiana 64 on Friday night. It was a game Purdue was going into, and we weren't exactly sure which team we were going to get. They had essentially bowed out of the Big Ten title race. They had lost another game at home after losing to Michigan. But they showed up early, and they made a bunch of shots, probably their best offensive performance of the year. And before you looked up, they were up double digits, and then they picked up a big win. Not only, bouncing back from their tough loss at home to Michigan, but their tough loss at Assembly Hall earlier in the year. What do you make of this Purdue team after this performance?
I think it was a really good week individually for Trey Kaufman-Renn, and that kind of continued into this game, Sean. A big thing we criticized, and I think you and Mike, just to a slight degree, not as much as I have. I've been a big critique of Purdue's depth all year as a national title contender. I think I was last year too, and clearly that proved out to be correct, even though they were damn close to beating Houston.
It was a good
Uh, th
matchup, though.
yeah, this game though was the opposite. Oscar Mayer 18 points. He showed some flashes in the Michigan game that could happen. Never really got rolling there, but this is all around what a really good Purdue performance is. You have contribution from their nucleus of three between Lawyer with 18. I don't think he missed all night from three. I think it was 4 of 4. TKR pouring in 20, doing his 15-foot shot, which is just money. And then Braden Smith, I think, got right back on track. Only turned it over once. I thought Michigan's size and the different looks Boynton and Dusty May threw at him really threw him off. I think this game he was right back to his groove. 8 assists, again, one turnover. And then Sean, there were some unfavorable calls for Indiana, but this is a game that Purdue probably wins at Mackey
Yeah,
9 times out of 10.
maybe more
Uh,
than that.
and I'll tell you this, Sean. There was not a moment in that game I thought Purdue wasn't going to win pretty handily.
Yeah, it was very clear from the beginning of the game that they were sharp offensively. You add on to the fact that they got a couple of nice whistles, put Indiana in foul trouble. We go back to, I think, before the season, Joe. I said I think the referees are going to be big for this Indiana team this year. They're not very big, and they do have to play defense with their hands from time to time. And when you get a quick whistle, it's just not going to be their day. Sometimes you add on to the fact that it's at your rival. They're coming in angry to begin with. They're the first or second ranked offense in the country. Like it's sort of all snowballed for Indiana. And yet they called 15 fouls in the first half on the Hoosiers. Probably half of them weren't fouls, or at least were very harsh. And then, after that, defense is hard enough anyway. And then you get on the fact that you can't really play with foul trouble. I think this is, we've seen Indiana enough this year. I think you just burn this tape and move on. Like you were
Mhm.
behind the eight ball early here. This team got rolling, and no matter what you did, they were better. And I think coming into this game, Joe, we said we kind of know what Indiana's going to do here, and I don't even think this is close to their worst game of the year. They ran into a buzzsaw. It wasn't great early, and then you're not going to come back against Purdue when they're rolling like this. And they shoot 65% from the field, 10 of 18 from three. Like they're going to win against every single team in the country when they shoot the ball like that. I mean, if you look at Indiana, Joe, 35% from three, 52% from the field. Like as ugly as this one was, I think that they could have played worse too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was Friday night. Unfortunate, but we'll talk about Indiana later and Purdue. Before the games, Joe, on Saturday, don't know how locked in you were on the road of this, but the NCAA Tournament Committee released their top 16 seeds. Now, of course, a lot of things have happened since then. which is a little bit annoying that they do it on Saturday.
Yeah.
But I think it's, I don't know if college football did it first. I think basketball may have done it first, and then college football took it from them. But there you have, a week to digest it and talk about it. But we did learn a few things about the Big Ten teams in that. We had Michigan at the time, the number one overall seed in the Midwest. We had Illinois and Purdue on the 2 line at 7 and 8. We had Nebraska and then Michigan State, Nebraska on the 3 line and Michigan State on the 4 line. From a Big Ten point of view, I don't think there was anything too surprising here, but overall pretty solid for the 5 teams in the top 16.
I think very solid. And, Illinois, and I know, again, we'll get into them a little later. They've kind of, it's weird. They've just been on and off, but to see their losses, which at the time were to only a really good Michigan State team and are on the road in Wisconsin, wasn't shocked that that didn't come back to necessarily bite them. Um, and kind of the same deal with Nebraska. Again, tough loss to Iowa last Tuesday, but I didn't think anything too major, to be quite honest with you. So good to see that committee feels the same way as we do.
Yeah, and there's that whole conversation beyond the number one seed. Really, I don't think I thought they actually Keith Gill, the commissioner, and I don't know how much you got to see of this, Joe, but he answered the questions like very well. They had clear answers as to why teams were over other teams.
Unlike another sport we're in,
It
we
was
cover.
not the wishy washy nonsense that we get from even from last year's commissioner for that matter. I
Yeah,
got North Carolina on the TV here, so I'm going to throw him under the bus. But
yeah.
the takeaway from this is that what separated teams at the top was the top of the line elite wins. Now, that doesn't have to track all the way through the bracket. Committees of the past have focused on one thing in one spot and then other things as they go down the bracket. But it's very clear, Joe, that the top wins that you have might be the tiebreaker. And ultimately, we saw Iowa State get the last number one seed over Houston because they beat them. Houston had better numbers in 6 of the 7 analytical tools that are used, but they beat them, so it didn't matter. So in terms of the Big Ten teams, I think we have a number of big non-conference wins in this league from those 5 teams, and then ultimately they've beaten up on each other a little bit too. But with that being what seems to be the determining factor, I do think that the Big Ten teams sit in pretty good shape, and then I think as you go further down the bracket, I think they're in pretty good shape too.
I agree, Sean.
So, Joe, when the games tipped on Saturday, that all became sort of a moot point.
Yeah.
We had 3 games on Saturday that I want to get to here. Nebraska beat Penn State by a bunch. Minnesota beat Rutgers. Maryland beat Washington. Not much to talk about from any of those games, other than Minnesota's up into the top 75 of the net. So if you played them on the road, that is now a quad 1. And if you played them at home, that's now a quad 2. I believe this one's the first one, Joe, so we're going to go to it. Nation's capital, you were there. Number 1 and essentially number 2 at the time, Duke. Duked it out at the district, and it was a really close game. Could have gone either way, but it's Duke that just comes out on top. Obviously, we did the stream. You gave us your halftime report. I don't think the second half was all that different, and
No.
unfortunately for you, Duke just came out in front.
Yeah, and I think what was fascinating, Sean, correct me if you think I'm mistaken. This was the first time I think Michigan was not out talented per se. That's not why Duke won, but roster for roster, Duke's talent is pretty equal to Michigan's, if not a little better.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
to see the Duke's elite defense in person, you watch them on TV. This is a totally different group. This is a group that threw Michigan off their game. If it weren't for Yaxel Lendeborg going off in the first half, perhaps Duke could have had an even bigger first half lead. And Cam Boozer, even though with foul trouble, he still had an impact on the game. This is a game shot. I think Dusty May, who's done an absolutely phenomenal job all year in his entire tenure of Michigan, I think he got a little out coached here. I think he played with fire with the Bara, getting his third foul in the first half. I understood his thinking there, and of course, we're the results-driven business, so it's pretty hard to say it didn't work. And I think John Shire called a lot of really good plays, cuts one-on-one situations to get Lee Axel Lendeborg off and get Cam Boozer on Roddy Gale. And there were some unfortunate calls, I think, for Michigan, but that's ultimately not why they lost. I think Duke outcoached them. I think they made the big shots, and what was shocking shot, it was 40 to 40 rebounding. That's a place Michigan really had to do better. It seemed like every timely rebound the Blue Devils got and made Michigan pay. Probably the biggest one is a 3-point game. Michigan stops them. Duke gets the rebound, immediately kicks it out to Cam Boozer, wide open three, goes up six. I think that's kind of the story of the game. Duke made the plays, Michigan didn't.
And I think, I actually did watch this game back, Joe, and I actually thought that Duke probably got a few extra whistles in that first half, but I think you could turn that around the other way in the second half. Like Duke had 5 fouls early in that second half. Um, they got. I think what happened in that first half was sort of like immediately erased in the second half. They called it tighter, um, but I think the two games that we've talked about, Joe, Indiana, Purdue, Duke, Michigan, the stark difference in how the game was officiated, Big Ten versus what's going to happen in the NCAA tournament, in what
Yeah.
Michigan and Duke happened here. So I think a lot went wrong for Michigan, Joe. I think a lot went wrong, and you still hung in with probably the second best team in the country. Like I don't think
Yeah,
you're going to play that bad again, and you probably beat all but maybe 3 or 4 teams with that performance.
and that's what I was saying
Yeah,
coming out of their shot. I don't think Michigan will miss. I don't think Michigan is going to shoot 23% from three all that often. And I think Elliot Cadeau, whatever he was dealing with his arm, probably impacted a little. You do wish that Trey McKinney and LJ Cason probably would have made a few more shots, but as they go, and as you know, Sean, very inconsequential loss for Michigan. I think
yeah.
if they're not the one in the Midwest, which again we'll get into later, it would not be because of this game. I promise.
Yeah, and I think both coaches really going into that game, Joe, on TV, they showed like a little, quick interview. They basically said that they're excited for this, free hit almost.
Mhm.
And even John Shire and Dusty May said that after the game too. He's like, you know what? We learned a lot today, and we're essentially in the same spot that we were when the day started. Now, I actually had Michigan drop into the number 3 overall one seed. That all means nothing. If they're number 1 seed, they're going to the Midwest. It's
Yeah,
Arizona, Duke, and Michigan. Doesn't matter the order. They're going to where they're going. But in terms of Cadeau, Joe, I think he saw ghosts a little bit here.
yeah,
This was the North Carolina Cadeau. And I had a lot of friends text me when we had some people in the chat on the stream like, this is the Cadeau that transferred from North Carolina.
yeah,
He hadn't shown up yet in Ann Arbor, really, more than maybe a game or two. He ultimately, made that three, made some free throws, but he had 0 points deep into this game. And then, the role players didn't really step up like we know they can. So Michigan, I think, will learn a lot. I think it was probably a D performance from them. And they
yep,
still were down one with a few minutes to go. And then not an ACC pod, but I think Duke is sort of uniquely qualified and suited to disrupt Michigan a little bit here.
absolutely.
And I don't know if anybody else can do that.
Maybe Arizona,
Yeah, maybe.
Wisconsin, if they hit shots, but Wisconsin
Yeah,
will
but that was
disrupt
a
anyone making 15 threes. I
that
promise,
was
Wisconsin making 15 threes beats anyone.
that was a we're gonna score more than you type of day. Not that
Yeah,
we're interested in stopping you, but
yeah.
all right, Joe. Well, the second game, big game of the day here, started before your game ended. So I missed the first half. It was Illinois going out to Pauley Pavilion, second game of the LA trip. They jumped out to a huge lead, 33-10. They were up. That is pretty much when I turned it on because it was an 8 o'clock Eastern time tip. 8:30, 8:45 or so, we made it over there. Looked like that UCLA was dead and buried. Man, they're getting smoked here. They didn't respond well to the Cronin stuff. Looked like Illinois was going to cruise to another victory, but not so fast. UCLA comes storming back. They get the game to overtime, and then Donovan Dent, with 3.5 seconds left, goes coast to coast and lays it in for the win. Don't know how much of this game you caught, but how shocked were you by this?
I was extremely shocked. I admittedly go out after the Michigan Duke game in DC, check my phone and say, "Oh, this game is over." I mean, 33 to 10 to an offense like Illinois. It's funny, Sean, because if this were at in Champaign-Urbana, you write it off.
Yeah,
It's kind of what Indiana felt. Different team, different game. But losing at Mackey, losing at Cole Center, losing at Breslin, even by 10 plus, you kind of write it off. Or to those teams, 10 plus. It's really hard to come back. What they did was nothing short of amazing. All five starters in double. figures, including Xavier Booker, 16 points, 7 of 8, probably his best collegiate game ever, Sean,
He's been
against a real
playing pretty
team.
well recently.
Yeah, but to see that happen, really good for him. He's probably been one of the most criticized players. Certainly at Michigan State, he's their most criticized player, but throughout the Big Ten country as well. Tyler Bilodeau, 6 of 11, and I think Donovan Dent. I know he made the last shot, but 15 assists, that's what's not getting talked about enough. That's completely a ridiculous stat line.
Yeah, no
And,
turnovers also.
and think about this shot. Illinois, 43 rebounds. UCLA, 27. Aside from maybe the point production, if you take that away, Illinois Illinois shoots, I mean, two more shots, but 13 of 42 from three. That's not horrific. And then you see also that they out rebound UCLA by a lot. You say, oh, they had a 20-point lead at one point. They ran away with it, and turned out not to be.
They didn't really come back by getting stops either. They just scored a
Yeah,
bunch.
exactly.
And Wagler did leave the game with an injury, and he ultimately came back and I think was fine. He ends up playing 39 of 45 minutes here. So I don't think that's much. They did start to lose a little bit of control on the game when he went out, but like I just watching this unfold, I couldn't believe how sharp the UCLA offense was. And this, Joe, to me reminded me of the Illinois defense that we've seen in years past where if you have some one-on-one players, you can get open shots and typically Underwood would leave you one-on-one and see what you got. And they just got outscored here. The plus 14 in rebounds, plus 16 in rebounds rather. You think, all right, like this Illinois is started to really, you know, put their will on teams on the boards. It didn't matter here. I mean, Dent was carving them up. This was the Donovan Dent that UCLA thought they got when they spent, rumored amounts of money on him from New Mexico. But yeah, this UCLA team clearly, not only did they respond to, the antics this week, and Mick Cronin did apologize for that, by the way, to his player most notably, which I think, was probably more important.
Well,
I don't think you have to.
I didn't see it happen, but I'll take his
Yeah,
word for it.
he did apologize to the player, but he did not apologize to the reporter who raised his voice at him. But they clearly responded to being buried here, and the LA trip will live to fight another day. Still, nobody has been able to knock off both USC and UCLA on the road. For Illinois, they score like 94 points on 79 possessions. I think you go into that game thinking that that's going to be plenty. It ultimately ended up being one short. But
Yeah, and
Joey,
Sean, one last thing
are you chalking
about
this up to
Illinois.
just the last game of the road trip, or is there more things to worry about here?
I think there's more to it, Sean, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah,
This is three straight games Illinois had. I don't want to say this was the first real significant lead of like 10 plus points that was blown, but the Wisconsin game. You
and
kind of
Michigan
let
State they had a lead too.
Yeah, John Blackwell, Nick Boyd, and Jeremy Fears. If you have an elite guards versus them, it makes no sense because Wagler and Bosma are both fantastic guards. But if you have elite guards offensively, you can really beat this team. And I certainly don't think anyone would scream at me if I said I think Illinois' talent is better than all three of the teams they lost. I mean, they lost to, and they had the lead over. I really think the over reliance on three pointers is getting ridiculous. Ben Humberhouse, I know he played really well this game. There are games he just does not have it, and they keep going back to him. In this particular case, shot, I thought what was egregious was, Mirkovic, 0 of 4 from three. Like most of the guys, aside from really Humberhouse and Boswell, no one else really had a good stroke going. Like
Yeah, this is
that's
a
the
bad
bottom
game for
line.
Merck. Bad game
Yeah.
for Jake Davis too. But in terms of just their defense, Joe, I think had a real resurgence on the defensive end once Boswell came back. You hold Indiana to 51 points. Boswell clearly a part of that. And then you blow USC out 101 to 65. Elijah Arenas 2 for 7 from the field. Boswell's assignment there. So you felt like Boswell and Illinois were on the right trajectory here defensively, and I don't think anybody won their battle defensively. Six players in double figures, and Trent Perry's the only starter that doesn't shoot, and Donovan Dent's 5 of 15 from the field, but He gets to the free throw line a few times too. I just think that this was a little bit of, a formula here to score against Illinois. You got to have players who can beat you one on one. And then if you can stretch the floor and hit double digit threes, you might be able to spread them out just a little bit. All right, Joe. Well, the last game that we're going to talk about from Saturday
Most
is,
consequential, honestly.
yeah, is just 5 or so miles away at the Galen Center, also in Los Angeles. Dana Altman and Oregon go down there and get an away victory. And Joe, Chad Baker-Mazara comes back. He scores 21 points. Or USC takes their second quad 3 loss at home. Big loss in terms of NCAA tournament hopes for the Trojans. This one was late. I didn't watch it, I'll be honest. But when I saw this one, I was shocked. Disappointing for USC.
What's really disappointing too is they win the turnover battle. Oregon's been sloppy with the ball all year long, 15 turnovers. Uh, you really have a limited, a, you have a limited like amount of options if you're Oregon. Kamari Evans, Nate Biddle. Those guys are 21 and 14, and you hold everyone else. It's the other guys. It's Carter, it's Simpkins. They're getting 11 and 12. That's really poor. I think probably the most disappointing thing I see for USC here, Sean, is free throws, 18 to 24. Needs to be a little better than that for a team that's that offensively driven, getting to the line. Um, I'm gonna be honest with you, Sean. I think both teams, based on what I watched on the highlights, just played really bad. And USC, shockingly, I found out, at least on that night, their floor was lower than Oregon's, which I didn't think was possible. Because I think Oregon, this is the worst year of the Dana Altman era. I still don't think less of him as a coach. But the fact that Oregon was really able to scrap this out, good on them, because I think Oregon was the team I thought was just going to pack it in the rest of the year. But Nate Biddle was last year eligibility. Clearly, he's not going to go down without a fight. So good on them. But in terms of USC, Sean, this will probably parlay into bracketology a bit.
Yep.
Uh,
Yeah,
th
but
this is
I
a
think
this is a
Chad
calamity.
Baker-Mazara comes back here. How did this happen?
This is a calamity because now Chad Baker-Mazara back 23 minutes, 21 points. It's not like he was completely useless. So the committee will factor that in, and I think USC now cost themselves a game. It's that literal. They take one step forward, but this might have been 3 steps back, not 2 steps back.
And I think the fact that they already had one of these show really, really hurts. You lose one game at home, okay. You know, 2 quad 3 losses, that is going to stick out on the bubble. In terms of Sunday, Joe, let's quickly talk about these two
Mhm.
games. Not like the super most not the best teams in the league. We had Michigan State sort of will their way to a 66-60 victory at home over a short-handed Ohio State team who was without John Mobley still, and Devin Royal also missed this game. This was just one of those games, Joe, where Michigan State found a way. It wasn't pretty, didn't always look like they were going to win, but when it came time to make the plays, they did.
Yeah, credit Michigan State a little bit here, but also I'm giving more of the credit to Ohio State, as
Yeah,
did
they
Tom
battled.
Izzo. I think Bruce Thornton has been playing some of the best basketball in the country, and if he were on a more notable or team that's squarely in the NCAA tournament or even national title picture, he'd be getting so much praise right now, even as Big Ten Player of the Year.
Joe, I think
He
he's
just
the
did.
most important player in the Big Ten. If you
I
take
agree.
any player off their team, I
Mhm.
think Bruce Thornton is out is the biggest impact.
Yeah, what really comes to show for Ohio State here is, the lack of help in the starting lineup. Christoph Tilly, I actually thought had a pretty decent game. Stayed out of foul trouble, stayed on the floor, which we've seen him struggle with at times. And I thought took some really good looks. You need more from Bynum, you need more from Puff Johnson, and they just did not shoot the three well at all. Outside of Thornton, who made two of their four threes, 4 of 22 for a team that is pretty reliant on that shot, I think it's not going to cut it. You're not going to be the
Especially
top 10, 15 team like Michigan State.
especially, on the road at Michigan State, a team that's so good defensively around the rim. You're not going to get the 50-50 calls when you're driving to the hoop. They needed to make some shots. Now, I think there is a little bit of something to worry about from Michigan State's point of view. They did see a lot of zone here from Ohio
Mhm.
State. And I think we've seen teams try it at times this year against Michigan State, but I think it worked here, Joe. It slowed them down. And if they're not making threes, I think Michigan State's going to have to see a lot of that. But Cooper comes through. Scott, again, only 12 points. You look at that, say, okay, he made a couple of big time shots, grabbed a couple of big rebounds. And then Fears with 11 and 8 also. It wasn't a very pretty performance from Michigan State. I definitely think that, they play at Purdue and at Indiana coming up. Like, if they play like this, I think they probably lose both of those games. But,
And by double digits too
but
in
what,
those environments.
like, what are you taking out of this from Michigan State? Just an ugly one, or there's some? I think there might be some overlying problems here.
The fact that their turnovers, I know their fans know about it, and trust me, local media does. The fact that their turnovers are not being talked about enough is pretty shocking. I know they only had 9 in this game, Sean, but it's the pure carelessness of them. That's
Yeah,
so uncharacteristic of Tom Izzo teams, especially when they have one of the better point guards in the country, Jeremy Fears Jr. Uh, Extremely unusual. He has 3 of them, which I don't really. It's the other 6 that make no sense. And I think at this point of the year, this is when Izzo teams start to really get in form. I'm not seeing it yet. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And frankly, if it doesn't happen until the Big Ten tournament, it doesn't really matter. But normally, like last year, around this time, Michigan State, different team, a little more senior laden with Jaden Akins. They had a star in Jace Richardson emerging. I'm not seeing it this year. I think Fears, Kohler, and Cooper are really good veterans. I need to see more out of guys like Cohen Carr consistently. You need to see a little more out of the bench too. I know the bench is young, but the other thing they also do need, Sean, is I think they need a signature win. They haven't had since Illinois, you know, haven't really played all too well. Wisconsin, the UCLA game, they play really well, I should say, but ever since that Michigan game, you feel like it's just on and off. Even that Rutgers game prior, I think they need a stretch of 2 good games. Like maybe you lose close at Mackey, but you win going away at Assembly Hall. I think that'd be really encouraging for the Spartans.
it's just yeah. When you talk about long term aspirations and winning 6 in a row, let alone 4 in a row, like I don't see that. I feel like they're going to when they play well, they win close games, and when they don't, they lose
Hmm.
by sort of it. The score might not be a lot, but they're losing the whole time. All right,
Yeah.
game 2 on Sunday. Joe's at the Kohl Center. Bennett starts in Iowa. Went up to play Nick Boyd and the Badgers. Iowa led by a little bit. They led by 1 at halftime, but it was all Wisconsin in the second half. They were able to get out in transition enough and score 44 and hold Iowa to just 30. Nick Boyd with 27 obviously led the way. John Blackwell, only 13, was in foul trouble in that first half, didn't really make an impact. Nolan Winter with 18, Rapp with 14. This looks like a nice victory, but Wisconsin did sort of pull away at the end. After what was a poor performance against Ohio State this week, Wisconsin bounced back in a pretty significant way.
Yeah, and I think this signifies a really good stretch for the Badgers. You beat Illinois, you beat Michigan State. The Illinois, sorry, the Ohio State game to me kind of a blip. I think
Yeah,
Thornton and Ohio State played the best game of their season, and frankly, they were due for a bad performance the way Wisconsin plays.
yep,
This game was interesting from an Iowa perspective, Sean. I thought they were going to get eventually get blown out, and they didn't. They just always kind of hung in there. Bennett
yeah.
starts his typical 20 plus, but the bench too giving good minutes as well. Iowa I think has a 7 or 8 guy rotation, Sean, and I think everyone in this game really contributed in a productive way. So, not a discouraging side for Iowa. I think we kind of know what they are. I don't think anyone's going to fool themselves that this is a Sweet 16 or later team. Uh, this is a type of performance though around this time for Iowa. They had two good ones last week. I consider this a good one, and obviously the huge win against Nebraska at home. So uh, I'll put it to you this way: if I'm a team in the Big Ten tournament, or if I'm the 8 or 9 that's matched against them, probably not too thrilled if they keep this run of form up.
And I think Iowa does sort of match up well with Wisconsin, both probably lacking a little bit in the forward department. But you talk about Iowa's best player starts is the same position as Blackwell and Boyd, and then you had Banks, who's been a solid guard for them too, and then Sage off the bench. Like I feel like Iowa can like beat Wisconsin, and then they play. Well, no, they don't play again. They play Nebraska again, but
Mhm.
I thought this was a dangerous spot here for Wisconsin, and the analytics certainly agreed. Iowa's 12, they were 12 spots higher in the net at the beginning of the day. Wisconsin was 2 point favorites here. Like this was not, you think about okay, Wisconsin's a 6 seed. You're playing an 8-9 seed at home. You should probably beat them. The numbers said a little differently. So Wisconsin went up to 32 in the net after this game. Now I know a lot of people, including Indiana fans, are watching that closely, hoping the Badgers get to 30. So Indiana gets another quad one win. But I feel like Wisconsin's going to go with how Boyd and Blackwell go, and if one of them has a really good game, they're probably going to win.
And if
All
they
right,
both
Joe.
do, I think they could beat 95% of teams in the tournament.
Yeah, and we've seen it now twice on the road, and things sort of tend to like avalanche quicker in the NCAA tournament. Like
Hmm.
let's say they're a 6 seed, they're playing a 3 seed. Wisconsin's up by 7 at halftime. Blackwell and Boyd both have 15 plus. Like that's the recipe of a team that can go on a run. And then when their big guys make threes, Winter with 2, Rapp with 5, like that's how they have to. They're not going to back down players in the post, and they're not going to, be a lob threat or anything like that. But they can make some triples and really open things up for Boyd and Blackwell. But in terms of bracketology, Joe, I did do a projection on Sunday morning. Didn't take into account these two games. I honestly don't know how much they really change
I don't
things.
think it changes much, to be honest with you.
No. So I will pull that up right now. If I still have it here, that would be great. All right, I think I do. So I can log. Yes, okay. All right, so I have my projection from yesterday morning. Let's get rid of the scoreboard. All right, so I did move Michigan to number 3 overall. Like I said earlier, I don't think it's all that important. I just think all three of those teams now have 2 losses, and Michigan's loss in quad 2 sort of separates them, and they all have great wins. In terms of Purdue and Illinois, I have Illinois at 7 and Purdue at 8 still. I don't know if Purdue can jump Illinois after that UCLA game because, of course, Illinois has the head to head at Mackey Arena. I think head to head really matters if it's away or neutral. Less if you beat a team by 4 at home, I don't know if that necessarily means you're better than them. But if you go on the road and beat them, I think that is very important. Nebraska is the 3 as well. I think Nebraska is a little bit behind Kansas and Florida in terms of the 3 seed pecking order. Now, Kansas did pick up a bad loss to Cincinnati on Saturday, so maybe Nebraska can close the gap there. And then I have Michigan State pretty solidly on that 4 line. They were 14th out of 16 on the bracket reveal, too. So I think they're clearly ahead of some of those other teams there. And then when you get into the SEC mess on the 5 line, I think if Michigan State can hold serve and can win maybe one of two of the next one or two of the next 2 games, I think they'll stay there. Wisconsin, I have bringing up to the 6 line. Obviously, those 2 wins are pulling them up a little bit higher than perhaps the numbers suggest. Iowa on the 8, UCLA and Indiana on the 10, and I do have Ohio State still in the field. They still don't have a quad 1 win. That is probably going to have to change, but they do have 3 wins against the field. So I am inclined to put them in right now over a team like USC, which now has 2 Q3 losses. And Joe, going back to availability, one of their quad 1 wins was with Rodney Rice, and they will not be bringing him to the tournament. So that could potentially ding them a little bit too. But that's where I have the Big Ten teams right now. Obviously, it's very, very tight there around the bubble. I think Iowa's got a great net. I think they're a little bit clear of that right now. But, it's getting down to it. Big Ten tournament coming soon. We'll take a look at the standings in a little bit. But and any thoughts here on the bracketology?
Yeah, if we go into some questions, Sean, we got our fellow Hoosier fan, at least for you, Sean Dillon. Is Indiana in any significant danger of falling off the bubble? I'm a little worried based on their recent performances against the elite teams in the conference that they may not be looked upon too favorably. Is the Magic number 3 beating Northwestern and Minnesota and one in the Big Ten tournament? Will that be enough?
I tend to think that 3 wins would be enough. Um, The I don't think anybody expected them to win either of those two games. Now, ultimately, the margins sort of do affect the predictive metrics a little bit, but they're still 33rd in predictive metrics and 36th in the net. Their resume is what's lacking a little bit here. So they probably do need that win against at least a quad 2 team. Now, the way that it lines up, Joe, let's say they go 2-2 to finish. Neither of those two wins would be quad 1 or 2, and then they'd probably play another one of those teams in the first round. So they might actually need two. They might need to feel super safe about themselves and to not, and I'm talking about this too because I'm an Indiana fan, but to not be super locked into the MAC or A10 tournaments. Indiana needs to beat Ohio State or Michigan State. I think 3 out of 4.
One more quad one. Yeah.
Yeah, and Ohio State is teetering in the top 40. Of course, that means quad 1A. And then Michigan State as well. I think Indiana is in a good spot to be selected right now. They do only have 4 wins over the top 2 quads, but they do have 6 in quad 3. So the meaningful games record is at 10-10. They have a win against a protected seed, a win on the road against a tournament team, the team that's right next to them there, UCLA. And then they have a third win against the field, too. None of the other bubble teams have all 3 of those. So, it's probably if you can beat, Michigan State, for example, on Sunday, like that would be monumental, and that would probably lock them in. But I don't want to guarantee anything after last year when they were incorrectly left out of the field. In terms of player availability, everybody is there. They're not getting dinged for missing anybody like some of these other teams might be. But yeah, it's going to be another tight end of the season for Indiana.
Yeah. A few more, Sean, here. We'll try to get through these quickly. From Patrick, who's our MSU fan. Is there any way Michigan State, oh man, negative fan set. Is there any way Michigan State, he's pretty much asking if they could fall off the protected seed line because they do have a brutal stretch if you see this upcoming, at Purdue, at Indiana, Rutgers, and then away to Michigan. That's like three really hard games on the road there, Sean.
Yeah, I mean 1-3 there would certainly make that a possibility. They're 12th in the net. They do only have that one quad 1A win, which is against Illinois at home. They do have 5 quad 1B wins and then no losses outside the top quads. I think it would probably take. I think if they go 2-2, they're still there. We'll say that because
And
Virginia,
Sean, is that why
Tennessee, Vanderbilt,
Kansas, is that why
every
like a Kansas is above them on the 3 line too? Quad 1A wins.
yeah. So Kansas has 5 of them, and
Hmm.
Michigan State only has 1. And Kansas does have that quad 2 loss, which I did take into account for this one. Um, but yeah, I think Michigan State needs another. And I would think, let's see, Purdue at Mackey, obviously quad 1A. I believe Indiana at Assembly Hall would be quad 1A also, because the Indiana is in the top 40 in the net. So one of two would fix that problem, at least for the time being. But in terms of the predictive metrics, they're still pretty high there. They're 12.3. Like I think they're significantly above the teams below them right now. And part of that answer might be what those teams do too. Can Vanderbilt or Alabama, can St. John's beat UConn Wednesday? I mean, that might more have to do with it, honestly, than what Michigan State does.
Excellent. Two more, Sean. Does Ohio State, period point blank, have to pick up one quad one win from Brendan?
Yes, but they might not. Like, Wisconsin is teetering on quad 1, and so is Northwestern away. So maybe not. Like, if both of those turn to quad 1, then there's 2. And then the Indiana game in the last game of the season is not quad 1 as of now.
Yeah.
Because Indiana's 36th in the net. They would have to
Hmm.
get to top 30. So
Yeah.
there's a way that they don't have to. Um, they pick up another one. I mean, they can't have a 0 in that column on Selection Sunday. But of course, they might not have to win any more games to do that. Like I said earlier with Ohio State, I do think that they're in a little bit of a better spot than some other people. Like this, they are going to have more quad one games. We're going to find out whether they win them or
Mhm.
not. It's people are like, well, I can't have them in now. Well, why not? Like their resume is what it is now. They have one thing. They don't have one thing that every other team on the bubble has. So it's going to be tough for Ohio State. They probably do need. Um, they is the Iowa game first
Iowa
for
game is
them?
first. Yep.
Yeah, that's a big one on the road at Carver Hawkeye Wednesday night, and then they host Purdue. I
Away to
mean,
Penn State. That's a game you can't
yeah, no,
really lose.
you have to win that
Yeah.
one. I believe we have to look at where Penn State is in the net. I don't know off the top of my head because they have not made it into bracketology conversations yet. 132 at
Yeah.
away 132. I do not think that would be quad two. So they definitely have to win that. Not that that helps much. But there's a way, Joe. They go 2-2. They beat Indiana, and then it might come down to whether they can win two games in the Big Ten tournament. Top 50 neutral. They're probably gonna have to win another quad one game. Actually, I'm
Yeah.
changing my mind there. Whether it's against Washington in Chicago might technically be quad one, but we'll have to see. They look primed for that 8-9 game, Joe. And actually, we'll go to the standings after the last bracketology question here.
Yep. And final bracketology question, Sean. We'll combine the two. Is there any way Purdue and Illinois could get on the one line? Is there any way Michigan can lose the one line in the Midwest to Iowa State? Great question.
First one, I think that fourth number one seed can be anybody on the two line, and then I think Florida and Kansas could get there too, because they just
Mhm.
play in loaded conferences.
Yeah.
Um, UConn is there sort of because Iowa State was there when the reveal happened. Iowa State loses to BYU. UConn picks up a quad one road win at Villanova, so I think it sort of was obvious that to flip them there. And then Houston, of course, lost two, so they couldn't take that spot. So I do think there's a little bit of a drop off after Iowa State, though. I think Illinois and Purdue would have to run the table into the Big Ten tournament to be in consideration there. And then, we all know what happens in the Big Ten tournament when it comes to seeding.
Yeah.
It might not be possible because of that, but Illinois still plays Michigan if they can beat them. Purdue still plays Michigan State.
Michigan
Like
State. Yeah.
there is a path to one
Mhm.
seed for them. I think it's
Yeah.
very narrow, and it probably comes down to Iowa State and Houston because the Big 12 probably. Houston plays tonight against Kansas. I'm going to do the stream in a little bit. When you're listening to this, the game's probably already happened. There might just be better opportunities for the other team, so it might not even matter what the Big Ten teams do. And then in terms of the other one, Joe, what
Is there a
Michigan?
way Iowa State could overtake Michigan as the
Oh,
one in the Midwest?
I don't even know if they'd pick the. Well, I don't know if you could pick the Midwest. The South is in Dallas.
Hmm.
I don't think so. No,
Yeah.
unless Michigan loses to a non-tournament team, which they haven't shown that they would do. No, I don't think so. I think those top three are pretty locked in, unless something crazy happens.
Sounds good. That does it for questions, Sean. Let's get to these standings.
All right, the Big Ten standings, Joe. We have got. I think it's a little bit too far away to do bball.knownothing.net to get like scenarios out there. With two games left, we'll do them for seedings and
Mhm.
stuff. But the way that it is this year, we have the top four teams with what is now the triple bye. They won't play until Friday. Thursday, teams 5 through 8 will be introduced. Really, Thursday, Friday, and on are the same. Have the 8-9 game at 11:30 on Friday, as we've been accustomed to over the years. The new part is that the 9 and the 10 will be playing Wednesday against. The 9 will be playing the 16, 17, and then the 10 will be playing the 15, 18. So right now, Joe, of the 5 ranked teams, we have Michigan State that's missing out on the triple bye. We have Wisconsin, UCLA, and Iowa also picking up buys. I don't think that's Obviously, Ohio State and Iowa are tied, and they haven't played yet. That game is happening this week, so we're going to have the tiebreaker there. And then we have Indiana and USC. That kind of caps it at the tournament teams. So it's very clear that the three teams on the bubble right now, Ohio State, Indiana, and USC 9, 10, and 11, are all going to have an extra game in the Big Ten tournament against a team below them. Now, is that a good thing or not? I don't think we can really tell at this point, because if a team just needs a win, and it doesn't matter who it comes against, that's probably a good thing. But if the team is solidly in the tournament, you don't want a quad 3 game out of nowhere that you might lose. So that's what I'm looking forward to for those three teams. But in terms of the Big Ten tournament, Joe, I think really the top 11 is where, the important stuff is going to happen.
I agree, Sean.
And then in terms of Wednesday and Tuesday, well, the Tuesday teams, it'll be the bottom four.
Mhm.
Those games will be, I don't even know if they're night games or not. I don't know if the viewers really care or not. But Thursday, Friday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we're gonna have four games: the noon, 2 o'clock Eastern, and then the 7 and 9. It might be 6:30 and 8:30.
Mhm.
I don't know exactly what the times are, but yes, Central Time Zone this year for the Big Ten tournament rather than the Eastern Time Zone. What's in Indy, so maybe it will be an hour later, but I don't know for sure. I'm sure the information is out there, but it's getting close, Joe. Big Ten tournament. Somebody's gonna win it, and
Yeah,
it,
someone
it
has
really
to.
could be it really could be one of any teams. And they did talk about the tournament games on TV again, and they reiterated that they do matter. Now, their work over the years has proven that they might not matter,
Yeah.
but I think we're gonna see it, and maybe in a few weeks we can do some scenarios on how the season will finish and where these teams will be seated. But I think we kind of have a pretty good idea already. But unless you got anything else, Joe, I think we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah, Sean, I've got two big games Thursday, Friday. We don't want to preview. We'll just advise the viewers. Purdue, Michigan State. That's a big game for top four. And assuming Michigan, I don't know whether you've listened to this or not, whether this game's happened. Michigan will at least clinch a share of the title should they beat Minnesota, which I assume if you're in the future, they did. Uh, Michigan, Illinois is Michigan wins that. They're not sharing the title. And if Illinois wins it, slight chance for them, winner of Michigan State, Purdue, and Nebraska to get a split.
Yeah, and that UCLA win was a nice ending to a pretty sour day for Michigan. That really put one hand on the trophy for them.
Yep.
All right, Joe, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.